Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The program will begin in 5 minutes. At this time, please move to your seats and help us start on schedule. As a reminder, keep your electronic devices turned on, but set them to silent. This way, you can text or email your questions for our guest speakers to the address on the screen. askmetna@gmail.com. AFCEA would like to recognize CompTIA, GIAC, and CertNexus, as well as AFCEA preferred partners American Public University, SANS Institute, and Western Governors University for helping us bring necessary training sessions and certification opportunities to our members and attendees.
Inventory my OCIE. Jacket, cold weather. 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 Come on, guys. Oh, NSN. Okay. And the NSN's ripped off.
The Army's new soldier equipping and asset management tool, SEAM, is changing the game on your Central Issue Facility, or CIF, and online direct ordering, or ODO, experience, prioritizing ease of use, agility, and convenience for you and your team. SEAM is designed to help you, the soldier, get the equipment you need when you need it, while streamlining the overall soldier experience from issue to turn-in. With SEAM, you can view, manage, and even print your signed organizational clothing and individual equipment, or OCIE record, from any approved device at any time. You can coordinate your OCIE experience to fit your schedule with features like the CIF Appointment Maker. Easily view, schedule, cancel, and manage in-person appointments at your or any CIF in one seamless experience. SEAM also allows unit commanders to conveniently view easy-to-understand data visualization tools to see and manage your unit's OCIE. SEAM makes it easier than ever for your soldiers to be ready for action so they can focus on becoming the world's most effective fighting force.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Day 2 of TechNet Augusta 2025. Please welcome to the stage AFCEA Greater Augusta Chapter's President, Eric Gladman.
Well, good morning. Day 2. Well, we kicked off really Monday with our golf tournament, and really just a great tournament to have here to raise money here. But before I get there, we couldn't do this without our sponsors. And our local sponsors, we had Ceiling Tech did breakfast. They also did lunch and Spargo as well. Our beverage carts were Realm One, Lead Endeavors, Compass Point, Secure Experts. Others that supported our golf tournament, Prusky Solutions, Iridium provided all the bags, FCN, Cyber Defense Innovation Center, Vision IT, and Tech Systems. We raised over $14,000 this past Monday, and so I want to give the sponsors and the golfers a round of applause for that, please. The local chapter here, I'm proud to be serving here as a president for the past 6 years. And this past year, we gave away $65,000 to STEM education, which is a foundation of AFCEA. It's included 11 teacher awards, which were worth $22,000. We gave away $38,000 in student scholarships as well. And then we also were able to award a $5,000 to the Cyber Patriot, which is a part of the summer program here in the local CSRA. So with that at $65,000, we couldn't do it without all the folks that we have here. But saying that, tell you a little bit about our board. You know, I appreciate the companies that allow my board members to serve with us. I have Mike Hammerstrong from Leidos. He's our VP. I have my treasurer, Dave Branch, who is just doing a wonderful job from Touchstone Futures. I also have my Vice President of Membership, Ernesto Cortez from Booz Allen, Darnell Washington for Secure Experts, Jason LeClaire from Peraton, Dr. Kimberly Burr, who was our new Amy Tushin this year. She's doing all the volunteer coordination for us and doing a wonderful job. She works over at the VA for us. Our golf lead, Christine Perkapow, with Realm One, and she also is our webmaster. And so we just can't do it without the company's support. And of course, I'm with Sands Institute, so I just want to give those companies a round for letting the board members serve on this board. Anybody want to know who won? So first place, and I'm I'm from the South, so I don't know how to really pronounce much stuff, but Team Huey Lau with Hadley, Crowder, McKean, and Whitehead were in first place. And of course, Softech Solutions, they're always in the top 3, came in second with Sam Anderson, Bricker, Long, and Larson. And third place was Sinewave with Lopez, Harper, and Tucker. And I failed to mention that Mary Kessler, we run the Major General Harry Green Lounge out here at the Augusta Airport, and we could not do that. We raised, I think, $365 Monday, but we could not do that with the NCO Academy here at the CCOE. So I just want to thank all the NCOs that do that and support that. They go out there a couple times a week, they clean it up, they restock it, and they keep it going. So I just love to give the NCOs a big round of applause because we couldn't do it. Sir, that's what I got on that. And you're next, I believe.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage Brigadier General Paul Fredenberg, United States Army retired, Executive Vice President, National Security and Defense, AFCEA International.
All right. All right, good morning and welcome to day 2, TechNet Augusta. Here we are. I hope everybody's ready to go. We got another big day for you today. But before I get started, while I got Eric on the stage, can I just please ask all of the Greater Augusta and Atlanta chapter leaders, volunteers, folks involved with those chapters, could you please stand up for just a second? I want people to see who you are, where you are, hopefully connect with you. So if you could, if we have any of those leaders, board members, volunteers for those chapters, if you could please stand up, I'd greatly appreciate it. Of course, I can't see anything with these lights on. So, and then there's great work that you contribute to these conference. And if there's board members or volunteers or leaders from any AFCEA chapter, anywhere, if I could ask you just to stand up real quick, and I would please offer a round of applause for all of these leaders in our association. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Thank you for what you do. Thank you. Hey, these relationships and partnerships are important, and it's part of having productive conferences and a productive association. So we thank them deeply for all their hard work, dedication. All right, what a great day we had yesterday. I hope you had the opportunity to hear Major Tyler Johnson speak. He spoke at our opening session, and he really laid the foundation for our objectives here this week. We're all working on ideas and solutions in support of the Army's continuous transformation to adopt and integrate the non-kinetic capabilities to dominate the future fight. That's what we're doing here. He laid that out, those tactical level objectives, integrating capabilities into the platoons, companies, battalions, and up to the brigade level, and then as they work towards the division transformations here coming up very, very soon. So that was a great way to kick it off. We had other phenomenal sessions yesterday, and we have a great lineup of topic speakers today. And just in case you weren't here yesterday, and I'm sure that's very few folks in this room who were not here yesterday, you can find a recap of everything that happened on the Signal event coverage page. You can see the link on the screens, I hope, and then you can also access this through the conference website. Bookmark this site because it will be updated continuously throughout the conference and then, of course, post-event. So stay plugged in. All right, it is now my absolute pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote, Forge the Future, Core Transformation, given by Rob Braun, Chief Technology Officer of the 18th Airborne Corps. As the CTO for the 18th Airborne Corps, Mr. Braun works with a diverse group of stakeholders across the Corps, the Army, and the DoD to improve the Corps digital acumen and adoption of modern technologies focused on warfighting transformation. In his military career, Mr. Braun served as the Deputy Director J6 Development in the Transmissions Branch at JSOC. He's Senior Technical Advisor at the 7th Ranger Regiment and the Senior Technical Advisor at the 7th Special Forces Group, and the Operations Officer at the SAC-UR and UCOM Commanders Communication Teams. So he has a breadth of experience in multiple levels of our formation and a deep experience with our special operators. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Rob Braun.
It's good music, yeah. All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak at the 2025 AFCEA TechNet Augusta event. This is a tremendous honor to be able to come out here, speak to the group, and explain kind of what we do in the 18th Airborne Corps. Now, when I got this, you're looking at non-kinetic dominance and multi-domain operations. Like, what does that even mean? That is a lot to unpack, right? So how do you get after that problem, non-kinetic dominance in multi-domain operations? So in my opinion, I believe that starts with culture, right? You have to have culture of innovation. You have to have that culture to think outside the box. And how am I going to enable my commander to have decision dominance in non-kinetic space, a space where we're not generally comfortable? So how do I figure out, how do I unpack that? So I think that what we do in the 18th Airborne Corps nests excellently well within the context of this particular TechNet. So as the CTO for the 18th Airborne Corps, like, I have the unique opportunity to work alongside service members, soldiers, civilians, academics, industry partners on the cutting edge of technology, and we're constantly trying to get after operational problems, because that's what we bring to the fight, right? And our strength extends beyond the battlefield, right? We develop, we test emerging technologies for use in tomorrow's fight. So you might be asking yourselves, like, how does the 18th Airborne Corps do this, right? It's a 3-star command. We do it because we have a culture of innovation, right? So we do this because we foster it at the lowest level, through a series of different exercises and events, initiatives like Scarlet Dragon and Dragon Slayer. So that's where we demonstrate the importance of identifying capability gaps in warfighting functions, and we explore new technologies or ideas to address them, right? There's times when a capability doesn't exist to solve an operational capability gap that a soldier identified in their warfighting function. There's other times where there's a fielded system of record that just comes up a little bit short because it's based on a requirement that's a little bit antiquated and didn't get updated in time. There's other times where we have a capability and we just don't know how to fully employ it, right? So it's not necessarily that there's a problem with our ability to project force. We just might not fully understand how to use the systems that we have. So in that scenario, right, we leverage our formations to focus on lethality, creating efficiency, honing skills, and emphasis on deploying as a JTF to support any combatant commander at any time as America's contingency corps. So we believe that we're leading the Army in an evolving landscape of technology and tactics, testing new warfighting capabilities at every training exercise and opportunity. And we want to grow that culture, right? So we do it through, like I said, Dragon Slayer and Scarlet Dragon, but now we're establishing this December the Lieutenant General James Gavin Joint Innovation Outpost. And that facility is going to bring together the requirements owners, the acquisitions professionals, academia, industry, and soldiers, to get them all in the same place, and they can all discuss together, how do we get after your problems? Maybe it's better using your system. Maybe it's a different TTP. Maybe it's a technical problem. Maybe it's an S&T problem that we need academics to start help us define, right? So we recognize that the Army is focused on creating a more efficient acquisitions process. It's been said numerous times that the acquisitions community within the Army needs to move faster. Yes, they need to move faster, but they need to move faster in the right direction. We don't need more things at a higher rate in the 18th Airborne Corps. We need the right things at the right time. And having that facility in partnerships with ASALT, ARL, DevCom, the NC University school system, Duke, local government, then we can start focusing on how the little R's, where it's appropriate, drive acquisition decisions to make sure that a soldier receives a capability that they're going to immediately deploy. It's not something that is based on an older requirement or something that just hasn't been refined in a while. So the big R's, they matter, right? Like, we're not going to go into the Joint Innovation Outpost and we're not going to develop the next tank. We don't need a new tank every year, but we might need new software every year. We might need new software faster than that. So we want to create that ecosystem to where we can separate what's appropriate to be in a long-term acquisitions life cycle and what's more appropriate to be in a shorter-term development system like the JIOP, as we refer to it. So our innovative culture, like I said, it's driven by this, the operational requirement. So contingency response core for the nation. So we have to respond like to the 50-meter target, right? So everything that we look at is where our soldiers and our service members are on the ground, and they bring up surface as needs and requirements. So we filter that through our ARL DevCom innovation labs, our DIRT labs, and then the Joint Innovation Outpost should be an umbrella to cover those, so we can start to capture that stuff, bring in academia, bring in industry. Like, we need industry partners, right? And that's where the transformation starts, is with the soldiers. So Dragon's Lair, as I mentioned briefly earlier, and we can dig into that a little bit now, that's essentially our Shark Tank event for innovation. So within the culture that we have in the 18th Airborne Corps, we want soldiers to look at problems that they face in their warfighting function, executing warrior skills tasks on where am I coming up short, where can I be more efficient, how can I find more success. We want them to start thinking outside the box. And the Catalyst Pathfinder program and the DIRT labs provide the foundational structure for them to do that. They can go in, they can work with 3D printers, they can work with industry partners, they can work with professors in academia, and they can start to figure out, I have an idea, how does my idea become a solution? Where we struggle right now is, how does that solution get out of Dragon's Lair and into a program? We've had success stories, but it's not the norm. We struggle there, right? Because we don't have the right authorities all the time. We don't necessarily have everything that we need to get something across the goal line. We don't have great visibility into everything that industry is doing. There's always a risk that our soldiers developing something that an industry partner is trying to get into the DoD, and then we have a conflict of interest with our partners. And we have to figure out how to resolve that. How do we embrace industry and bring them into the process so they can look at what our soldiers what they're thinking about and say, hey, I have a solution for that. Like, maybe we should try that solution. So that's why we want to grow Dragon's Lair, to start to incorporate some of those things. But we have had items that have become GSA procurable supply chain items. We've had things that will transition to program solutions that are in the process now with PEO Soldier, like it's a camouflage VIX, a vehicle integrated camouflage system. So you can rapidly, quickly deploy a camouflage netting system on an ISV or a Striker or a tank. It was developed specifically for a tank, but anyways, there's a pathway for that to get somewhere. So these events, right, they cultivate that grassroots ingenuity that we need. But so some of the things that we've had that have come through there is like a better gunner restraint system, because there was a death due to an M88 rollover. Right, we had an electronic warfare decoy emitting system that 101st developed, because they started to look at the problem when the Army said, hey, we got to get lighter, smaller, faster. Right, so we need to go through this continuous transformation. We need to go through C2 fix, and we need to figure out, how do we reduce the footprint of the brigade? And they thought, okay, well, actually, I also need to deceive the adversary and make them think that the footprint for my brigade TOC is actually in a different place. So some soldiers sat down and they invented or developed or put together a warfighter decoy emitter. So you could mimic what would be a battalion CP, a brigade TOC, and you can start to get the adversary to have to think, which one's actual, which one's real, which one do I need to go after? It just so happens to be that that's in line with an existing program office. It was just faster than what they had on their roadmap. So getting that exposure into the acquisitions communities can let them know, like, hey, these are the things that maybe you need to accelerate, because that's where we're thinking as an organization of where we need to find success to fight. So like, the Army of tomorrow is going to demand adaptability, right? It's going to demand, like I said, that innovative thought process, that culture where they're looking at, okay, what is in the art of possible? And in our opinion, Dragon's Lair provides that opportunity. And Dragon's Lair is not just an 18th Airborne Corps innovation Shark Tank event. That incorporates any force in the Army that is aligned with a Catalyst Pathfinder DIRT lab. They can participate in the exercise. We bring in judges. We have a panel. And we recently completed the 11th iteration. Dragon's Lair 11 it wasn't just another event. That was a testament to the DoD's commitment to fostering culture of bottom-up innovation. So the event winners at Dragon's Lair 11 were Sergeant First Class Jesus Naranjo and First Lieutenant William Rambin. They were in the 82nd, and when they got their ISVs, so they got a small number of infantry squad vehicles, and they looked at, okay, I need to be able to maneuver with the vehicle with the systems that I have to fight with in an efficient manner. So they happen to look at, I have an 81 millimeter mortar system that I have to deploy. Now I have to get into an ISV where the vehicle is designed to be a modular platform, but it's in its nascent stages. So they're still developing what it looks like to incorporate all these different warfighting function capabilities onto the vehicle. It's like, well, we have 3D printing capabilities, we have ideas. So they figured out a way to safely mount and secure the 81 millimeter mortar system so they can rapidly deploy it off the vehicle, quickly stow it on the vehicle and move to the next target. So it wasn't anything earth-shattering, right? We're not building the next rocket. Like, these are just operational problems. We're like, hey, I can do this. Like, I can figure this out. So the opportunity, right, our opportunity lies in inspiring action by effectively communicating the event's value to the target audience. And like I said, we're trying to grow the target audience. Right now, we're very focused down and in. We want to be able to focus up and out with the exercise. So that's where we want to start to grow Dragon's Lair. In the future, that exercise should involve industry, where it's like, okay, we have some things that soldiers are doing to try to solve problems, but we want to know, what are you doing, right? We want to present you the problems, and then you tell us what you believe the best solutions are, and let's have an engagement. Let's figure that out. And then we can start to feed that into our Scarlet Dragon exercise series. So I mentioned Scarlet Dragon in the beginning. Scarlet Dragon was born out of our fires community to just look at how can I more effectively engage targets and move down the high priority target list faster, preserve magazine depth, become experts at the deep fight. So within that, we started to bring in industry partners, and we started to look at, okay, how can we evolve and how can we do things faster, right? That's where we started to land on Maven and starting to use AI for targeting, right? But that was a partnership with the NGA and the DoD's Chief Data and Artificial Intelligence Office, so to serve as a venue that, with General Kurilla and General Donahue, General Kurilla's like, we will be the first AI-enabled Accord. We became the first AI-enabled Corps. And then General Donahue came in and said, hey, we're going to fight off live data. To the point that I don't want you, nobody's briefing me on PowerPoint slides, live data. And it doesn't mean it has to come from a machine, but it has to be closest to the source that generates that data so you can make it actionable by other warfighting functions. So all these things created the culture, right? And then that's what enables what we believe will set the tone for decision dominance, whether it's kinetic or non-kinetic, right? Having access to the information and flat across all the warfighting functions allows people to understand, okay, you're going after a technical solution. What is that? How does that affect me, right? You're in fires, I'm in logistics. Like, I don't understand the connective tissue. Then you start to look at, okay, well, we need to know how many 155 rounds we have, how to resupply those faster, what's in the theater, at what point are we going to exhaust what our resources are, and we have to look at, all right, maybe we need to change what we target, and we need to target more specifically. So bringing all that connective tissue together is what we do in Scarlet Dragon. We're actually in a Scarlet Dragon right now, Scarlet Dragon 25-3. That Scarlet Dragon exercise started 2 weeks ago. This is the third week, execution week. We bring in industry partners, right? We basically have a tech deep dive with them. We sit down, we lay out what are our problems, what are the things that we're trying to solve. We look at what industry partners can deliver to the fight, and then we bring them into our mission training complex on Fort Bragg, and we go through the Scarlet Dragon exercise series. And you either succeed or you don't succeed, but we all learn, right? We all learn on, were we chasing the right problem? Did you understand the problem correctly with the technology that you have? And did all those things come together appropriately? Now, the interesting thing is now with General Anderson, right? With General Anderson, we're campaigning. So we took the time as a Corps to sit down and lay out a campaign plan of how we integrate into every Army Service Component Command and combatant commander's mission and what our role is within that mission. So now we have, over the next several years, what our actual salient problems are if we were to deploy as a joint task force into that AOR. So we need to start doing now for industry, for our partners and everybody in this room, is we need to start messaging better on what we want to do with Scarlet Dragon. So Scarlet Dragon 25-3, we were really vectored into Southcom and to Joint Interagency Task Force South. Very specific things that they wanted to do. It was a great opportunity for us. They're adopting the Maven platform, so they're trying to understand, like, how do we develop efficiency in warfighting functions? How do we start to incorporate live data? How do we bring all those things together to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning, the different computer vision models that exist? And we have a vested interest because we have, as a Joint Task Force Contingency Corps, we have to integrate with every combatant command everywhere in the, like, all of them. So when we look at Southcom, well, we're not really mature in Southcom. We don't have a lot of stuff that we've done in Southcom. So if we were to have to go down to Southcom to conduct a non-combatant evacuation operation, how would we tie into that community? Like how, like Giant of South is tied into local entities, law enforcement, host nations. Like that's a sweet spot for us. Like we need to understand how they're doing that. Let them understand how we show up and how we integrate together. And then Southcom as the combatant command can understand how do I actually employ the 18th Airborne Corps? If I had to employ them, what do they show up with? How do they talk? So the exercise is great success. I actually left out of there a couple days early to come here to speak here because this is incredibly important. Like, this event is important to the future of the Army. It just is. It always has been, and right now more than ever, because we have to establish innovative culture throughout the force. I think we're right there on the cusp. We're right there. But anyway, so we'll come out of that Scarlet Dragon exercise 25-3, and we'll immediately begin preparing for 26-1. Now, within the campaign plan, within our lines of effort, we can deliberately go back, sit down as a Corps, and say, all right, what are the exact problems that we want to solve? Because we're going to execute 26-1 also in support of Southcom. And it is partnered still with NGA and CDAO as a guide exercise. So we will global information dominance exercise. So we'll look at 26-1. And as we start to tease out those actual problem sets, we're going to do a better job of communicating out to our industry partners of what exactly we want to accomplish. Right? And then we're going to publish out of this Scarlet Dragon, what did we go in thinking we were going to do, what did we do, and what did we achieve or not achieve. So I think the messaging right now is what's been the limitation on that exercise being more effective and more impactful than it is. Right? And then we'll pivot at some point to Indo-PACOM. But we're going to continue to evolve the exercise series because we're focused on experimentation. And like I said, it's just another iteration of the culture that we've developed for innovation and thought processes, and looking at something like, that's fine, that's how this system works, or that's how the process exists, but I think we can do it better. And we just give them the tools to try. And you don't have to win. Everything doesn't have to be a win. It's a learning event. Like, that's the good thing about it being an experimentation exercise, is the outcome doesn't necessarily mean that somebody lived or died. Right? It just means that we understand better of how we're going to approach the situation when that time comes. Right? So we believe that exercise, it validates the essential capability, structures, and processes to enable a joint task force headquarters. Right? We need to understand, how do we function in an over-horizon environment? Right? If we get into Indo-PACOM, you have the tyranny of distance. How does the 18th Airborne Corps function with that problem set? So that's something that we will look at in a future Scarlet Dragon, of how are we going to do that? How are we going to enable decision dominance, non-kinetic dominance in a multi-domain operation? Literally everything nests so perfectly within that. Like I said, it's a lot to unpack, but you have to have the right culture to unpack it and figure out how I'm going to attack that problem, right? So within JIDF South, we're partnered, and not just JIDF South. We took the first 2 weeks of Scarlet Dragon 25-3, and we went after 18th Airborne Corps unique goals, right? So we have to blend the two together. So we partner with the Navy, we partner with the Marine Corps, we partner with the Air Force. So we partner with NGA, we partner with JIDF South and Southcom. We partner with industry, many industry. So we have a lot of firsts that we do at these Scarlet Dragons that I don't think get the right level of attention to really like move the needle on where the Army's thinking they need to go. Like some of the things, like when we looked at AWS Diode, one of a capability that came out that they brought to us that we weren't really planning for was like, hey, you can deploy Wicker and you can chat on Unclass, drop an attachment in it, show up on a SIPR Wicker in a chat group, and everybody gets it. It's just right across the CDS. Well, log stat reporting, that's a problem. Like, we struggle with log stat reporting, just like the rest of the Army does, because it might be a radio call, it might be a Teams message, it might be a chat. Some way you're gonna get in a log stat report. But if everybody has an Army enterprise solution, Wicker, and they just go onto Wicker and they drop in a log stat in a spreadsheet or a CSV file, you just pick it up on SIPR. Now I can incorporate that into my system and I can start to get after predictive logistics. Because the Joint Task Day 4 has a dashboard of what the logistics resources are that are in theaters, but they don't have consumption rates. We don't have everything that exists in a theater, but we can provide the consumption rates. So now we're like just starting to it's like we start to tease these things out, we lay the foundation for, okay, now we can get to predictive logistics because we're just connecting the dots, right? We're figuring out what the solution is at our echelon, but we have the vision to see how does that impact the COCOM, right? And how does a COCOM manage their theater? Well, they have to know how the things are being expended in the theater to make the decisions as a theater commander. So what we want to do now is evolve that into what I mentioned, the Lieutenant General Gavin Joint Innovation Outpost. So the Lieutenant General Gavin Joint Innovation Outpost was started under General Kurilla. And then it was stewarded by General Donahue, and then now it is going to be completed by General Anderson. So the Joint Innovation Outpost, as referred to as the JIOP, it is in the old officer club on Fort Bragg. It's been a Milcon renovation project. They kept a lot of the history of the building, so it's actually a really nice facility. But the goal is we want to bring together the community, right? We want to put the community with soldiers. And the timing couldn't be better. Because right now, like everything happens for a reason. And as the Army has started to evolve and looked at, okay, we need to transform in contact. Like we need to be more agile. We need to be lower signature, lighter weight, move faster, more lethal. But we have to start thinking differently. We just happen to have a facility to do that, right? And in that facility, we're going to be partnered with ASALT. So ASALT they're looking at acquisition reform. What does acquisition reform look like for the Army? Right? How do we get closer to the source of the problem to ensure that the material solution is valuable, right? That we're putting the right things into long-term acquisition pathways, and we're putting the right things into shorter-term, experimentation exercises to prove that we need them. So that facility that's literally going to be moving at the speed of combat, and we want. Like I said, everything happens for a reason. So right now we have the state of North Carolina, we're building an innovation ecosystem partnered with other entities in the state. So the Joint Innovation Outpost is one aspect of it where we can look at how do we support ASALT retooling acquisitions reform for the Army, and how do we better reflect where requirements are validated and where they come from. And then at the same time, yes, it's a challenge to bring industry partners into Fort Bragg. That will always be a challenge, right? We'll always be limited in the amount that we can do on the installation as a core, right? So that's the partnership with ASALT's going to help with that. But the state of North Carolina is also looking at innovation. How do we innovate and spur small businesses within the ecosystem of North Carolina? So the Fayetteville and Cumberland County Economic Development Corporation they're putting together an innovation hub in downtown Fayetteville that we will partner with. Right, so that's a large facility where it's easy for industry to get access to. What we need to do is we just bring the problems, right, from the Department of Defense. And then we figure out, okay, when something is mature and it makes sense, how do we transition that back into a defense architecture? And when we look at IT systems or mission command systems, it gives us an ability to offload some of that risk for our operational networks, and we don't have to expose those to experimentation. Right? We can expose a representative network that's not connected to our mission systems, and we can start to evaluate those capabilities. We can look at the biggest problem that I've seen with small businesses when they want to come and work with the Department of Defense is they don't understand what an ATO is. They don't understand what cybersecurity RMF is. They don't know what artifacts are. Like, we put these requirements on them, and they don't even know the language that we're speaking. So we have an opportunity then to establish something to start fostering that from the beginning. Right? Like, I don't need to build an ATO package. I just need you to understand the tools that we use to assess vulnerabilities and secure our architectures to make sure that we can operate in the most disadvantageous environments, whether it's a cyber environment or a physical environment, and start to help them understand the artifacts that they need. They don't know what a DISA-STIG is, but we can tell them, hey, this is the capability you have. I'm pretty sure that the security technical implementation guide that you need is this one. So we're going to use these tools to scan your software, and we're going to provide you back the results. You fix it and come back, and we'll have a different conversation. And we can get that level of maturity, then they're more comfortable in what direction they're going in. The other thing that we don't want to see is we don't want to see a defense-only capability. Like, that just doesn't have longevity. We want dual-use technologies. Because if it's a dual-use technology, industry is going to drive you to change faster than we will. It's just how it always will be. But we need to be able to take that dual-use technology and equate that to a defense capability. So we're looking at that as it's literally the premier innovation facility driven by the soldier, where acquisition professionals where they have the ability to deliver a capability that's useful right out of the gate. Right? And that's what the future of the innovation ecosystem, that's what we believe it looks like for the Army. And if we can get it right, that could potentially be the model for what the rest of major installations and major commands look like. Is how do we shorten that chain of what we need to what we get, and how do we make sure that what we get is useful and it's driven by the people that actually have to employ it. Like, the main thing that we focus on is, well, me personally, what I focus on, and that's why I love doing this job, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I loved every minute that I served, was it's all about that man or woman that has to run out into the darkness, and put their life on the line to defend the freedoms of our nation. Right? If we're not enabling that, then we're not moving in the right direction. Right? And that's where our focus is. And that's why we go down to the lowest soldier on what are the things that you need, right, as a user. Where are your deficiencies? So I think there's a lot that we're doing, and I think this is real-time acquisitions reform. And it's a completely different way to get after the problem. And I know there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot. I know there are certain, not even certain, there's people that are going to listen to the things that I say, or the culture that we have in the 18th Airborne Corps, and they're going to look like, hey, this is problematic, right? Like, there's other entities in the Army that are supposed to do this. You know, there's other pathways. But what gets lost is that user feedback, right? Like, yes, we do not try to do anything that is outside of a supporting role to Army Futures Command, a supporting role to ASALT, a supporting role to DevCom. Like, all we are is the organization that can define what it is that other people should focus on. Army Futures Command needs to look at the Army, like the big Army. What's the future vision of the Army? How do they make that the right thing? We're simply a tool in the kit bag to be able to inform some of those decisions. And we're a test bed where we look at, we want to try it. Like, give us whatever it is, give it to us early. We have an exercise series where we can experiment with it that's not aligned to anything other than, you know, what we want to shape it into. So there's zero risk of failure, right? It's just an information experiment. We can go back and we can say, hey, yep, this is great. It needs to go this way. And we've done this. We went out to Capstone 5, and we jumped on Next Gen C2, you know, which Next Gen Command and Control, that is a great goal that the Army's going after, because you can flatten comms amongst commands, right? Everybody can look at the same data. Well, it just so happens that we were already doing a lot of it, so jumping into that platform, helping out Army Futures Command to look like, hey, how would a Corps use this, was not a huge lift for us. Like, we were able to pivot, do that, show success, and move on, go back to our warfighting exercises and continue as normal, right? So there's other things that are risky as well. Like, I brought up cybersecurity. One of the things that General Anderson has been advocating for is risk, right? If he owns the outcome of the risk, then he should own the risk decision, or at least a portion of the risk decision that's appropriate, right? So when he looks at, I have a battlefield of things that is a weapon system, right? I need to go and employ my weapon system. I need to understand the risk that employing that weapon system entails, right? What's acceptable at a Corps, what's not acceptable. Like, he needs to understand all of those things, and he wants to, because he understands that at the end of the day, if things go sideways, he owns it. So that's why he's like, hey, I want to be an AO for my battlefield of things. He's like, because I want to be the one that has to answer for why something did what it did, or didn't do what it did, or didn't do what it did not do. And it's had a really interesting effect within the Corps, because now everybody within the 18th Airborne Corps is hyper-focused on security and securing the network and being responsible, because now their boss is the one that has to answer for it. So it had this unintended effect that has been incredibly beneficial. Like, when we were doing our engineering week for this Scarlet Dragon exercise, we brought in a couple of capabilities, we put them on the network, and we have a cyber team that's actively monitoring our battlefield of things architecture. And they found a couple of technologies that were beaconing out where they shouldn't be, that we did not expect. So immediately got it, took it off the network, talked to the vendor, they fixed it, put it back on the network, and it was an immediate risk mitigation. But that was something that we didn't necessarily hyper-focus on before, because that risk it was somebody else's problem. Well, now it's our problem, right? So that's the way that this is how we continue to foster innovation. We develop ownership of the problem, ownership of the solution, ownership of the sustainment, and that's all soldiers want. That's all we want. So I think right now we're in a really good spot where we're really well aligned with continuous transformation. We're really well aligned with the way the Army wants to go, and we're laying the framework on how to sustain that, how to make that, how to scale it. I think it's a really good opportunity. So right now, like, we're leading the way in how we're going to fight as a JTF. Like, I mean, we're doing that. And we're from AI integration, like I said, and in computer vision models, to live data, to embracing new technologies, developing ground-up solutions. Like, right now, we're one of the DoD's premier formations that is incorporating innovation and trying to look at future technologies and taking risk to put those into the formation to get after problems, putting trust in our soldiers to develop a thing that they need. And maybe it's the right thing, maybe it's not, but we're gonna let them try, because we won't know until they do, right? So I encourage and welcome any and all of you to reach out to myself, reach out to General Anderson, ask us, how do you get in? How do you participate? You know, what are the deltas? Where do we need help? Because obviously we're not doing everything right. We're gonna need help, right? So any opportunity that you think that you could provide value or we can provide value, let's team up and let's make it happen. Because we're going to continue to forge forward, right? And we're going to meet the threats to our future and the future of the nation head on. Because as America's contingency corps, we have no choice. We have to be able to respond in kind at the point of need when called upon. But no matter the domain, thank you. I think we've got some time for questions.
How is the Corps leveraging LLMs to better integrate data faster without an ontology, given that ontology is no longer required in many use cases?
It's almost like a couple of questions there. Okay, so large language models, so LLMs, is something that we integrate right now. So we went down to XVIII South, and in the platform, so in NGA Maven, right, there's the ability to deploy an LLM that you can build on your own. You can define the criteria of what you want that model to do, the responses you want it to get, and immediately, as soon as that organization understood that, they built 5 different LLMs, 5 different AI engines in the span of a couple of weeks. So we look at how do we create efficiency. So in the way that we look at AI in the platform is how do I get a system to do the mundane tasks. What I've seen is a lot of times there are people that believe that when they look at AI that how do I get an AI to do the really complex thing? I don't need AI to do anything really complex. I need AI to do the really mundane things so I can trust in my soldiers and officers and NCOs and DA civilians and industry partners to focus on the complex things, right? So the less time they're spending on the mundane, the more time they can focus on the complex. And then the complex starts to become mundane. And then we have this great cascading effect where we're building trust in AI and our systems because we're not asking it to do too much. And then we're spurring thought by freeing up some of that bandwidth that our users have to look at hard problems, right? And ontology is always going to be an issue. Ontology is, depending on the data structure, the data source, the message structure, the ontology is going to change. So what we have to look at is how to, within AI, and I want to query it to go and find certain types of data and present solutions to some of these mundane tasks, I have to be able to define the ontologies that it's looking at, right? I don't think that the DoD needs to standardize an ontology for data. We don't think we need to standardize an API. I just need to know what your ontology is so I can know how to incorporate it. I know how to understand it. I need to know how to connect to your API. I need your ICD. I need to know what you present. What can I access? What are the limitations? So that way I can incorporate it. I don't need a standardized thing because that's gonna alienate us from industry. And we need to just, whatever industry's doing, we gotta be able to adapt.
What are your thoughts on absorbing more risk than the Corps can control? Offensive ops use edge and midpoints as access points into larger enterprises.
So that goes back to one of my discussion points that we're trying to understand, and we need partners to understand. So there's no desire by the Corps commander to control risk to a strategic asset, right? So that's where we have to kind of step back and unpack what risk needs to sit where, what's appropriate, right? Like the Corps commander in one theater may have the ability to assume risk that he should not have the ability to assume in another theater, right? There's an understanding there. So there's a symbiotic relationship and a teaming that would happen between the AO and a Corps, the ASCC that they would fall under, right? Because naturally when we deploy, we're not just going to be an autonomous entity. We have a chain of command and we will fall under that ASCC and they will drive what differences happen within risk. And then there's DISA and NETCOM. There's entities that have to be responsible for the risk assumption for the enterprise. And that's not, General Anderson does not need to assume risk for what's going to happen with SharePoint or any enterprise service. That would not be appropriate. He just needs to be able to assume risk for how he's going to employ his forces and how he's going to employ his IT weapon system. So I think there's still a lot that we're evolving and we're understanding on what right looks like. Right now, we're just taking the first steps in what we believe is the right direction.
Do you think we should look for less sophisticated operative solutions to provide to troops on the ground in order to reduce the attack surface and the maintenance?
So yes and no. It depends on the warfighting function and what it is that we need to accomplish. But generally speaking, yes, removing complexity is always a goal to make the end user component item easier, more efficient, more effective to employ. The risk there, is that complexity has to go somewhere. So if it's a system that's just overly complex for no reason other than it does this bespoke, unique thing, and it doesn't need to be complex, by all means, we need to remove the complexity and just make it simple, right? But if it's something that's complex because there's a lot that has to go into the way that the system functions or the way that we have to support it, moving that complexity to a different echelon is just kind of like, it's like shuffling risk around, right? We have to catch up. We really do. Like right now when we looked at, all right, we're going to reduce the complexity in a battalion, in a brigade, and then we're going to roll that stuff up to a division. We're not looking at what it takes to man that division. What does it take to man the corps? And that's the other thing, like when we look at the risk assumption for the commander and being an AO for his battlefield of things, we are not staffed correctly. So we really do need to have a genuine manpower study on what that looks like to support those capabilities. When we look at weapon systems, obviously the simpler we can make a weapon system to employ, the better. The simpler we can make an AI model that I can run at edge that can explain MOS-related tasks to somebody that doesn't have that MOS means that if that MOS is no longer available for whatever reason, the task can still be accomplished because it's critical to the mission. Right? So there's other places where we need to kind of increase the complexity behind the solution to generate a simplistic interface for the user.
What are some of the best or most impactful innovations to come out of Dragon's Lair?
So, ironically, some of the most impactful things that are happening in the dirt labs that I get exposed to just by the nature of Dragon's Lair are things that just don't tend to resonate for some reason. It's just solving a simple problem at the point of need. I was down at the Braun Innovation Center not too long ago at Fort Stewart, and some soldiers, it was just in passing, it's on a table, they were showing me all the other things they were doing. Like they discovered that there was a problem with the impeller on a Bradley in the water pump, but you couldn't order the impeller, you could only order the whole water pump, so they figured out a way to fix that with some different 3D printed materials and what had the least effect by the different antifreeze and chemicals in the cooling system. And then on the table, there's this just small piece of plastic. It looked like just like a little L shape. I'm like, hey, what is that? Like, oh, well, when we get in and out of a striker, your boots catch on these cables, and then every so often we got to replace the cables, and the cables are like $5,000. So we just 3D printed this piece of plastic to cover the cables, and now we don't ever break them anymore. I'm like, well, does anybody know that you're doing, that you did that? And they're like, well, no, I mean, it just makes it easier for us, and we got a unit budget, and we can't really afford all the cables. I'm like, but this is something like that is just monumentally impactful. So it's super low cost to the Army. It's not a massive change. It's a bolt-on to an existing system, and it just protects it to make it more effective, just more efficient, more sustainable. Those are the things that now, when we get the Joint Innovation Outpost stood up, and it's not really an umbrella over our innovation centers, because the innovation centers are nested within Catalyst Pathfinder, and that's really at the division level. But it's insight. We have an innovation forum where we engage with our divisions and we see what they're doing. But we need to get better at getting out there and seeing the smaller things that they're doing that they don't understand are as impactful as they are. And then how do we expose those things to our acquisition partners to be hey, this is easy. This thing costs 13 cents to print, and it saves $5,000 over a period of time because the cable's still attached. So there's a lot of impactful things. The other one that just came through Dragon's Lair that I went and for the 82nd does their down select of innovation efforts, and I was a panel judge for them. And a couple of soldiers had developed an SRR carrying case. Right now they're like, okay, I get a Skydio drone. and it just comes as a Skydio drone. It's like, so I got a UAV, that's fantastic, but I got to find somewhere to carry it. You know, it didn't come with anything. So they were like, okay, I can make a Cordura case, and I can 3D print a suspended insert for it, and I can break it down, put it inside that case, and I can just clip it onto my rucksack or my belt loop, and now I've got an easy way to carry around, you know, my SRR. But it was just like, those are the things that when we're looking at material solutions, we don't think through, like, how does somebody actually have to put this in their rucksack and carry it around? You know, but that's another one that has the potential to be very impactful for the force. But it was just, they're just looking like, hey, how do I go on patrol with this thing? So there's a lot of things, all the most impactful things are things that you just don't, they're not these exquisite developments.
How does 18th Airborne Corps program for the financial resources required for labs, 3D printers, and everything required for their innovation initiatives? Are these efforts explicitly funded through the POM, or does the CG use OpTempo dollars to fund associated costs?
So right now, the innovation centers are funded through the Catalyst Pathfinder program, through DevCom ARL. So the commander doesn't have to look at OpFund to be able to sustain innovation that has supposed to, by definition, have a pathway into support the Army. And that's the purpose of the ARL DevCom Catalyst Pathfinder program, is how do we capture that innovation and how do we affect the Army? So those things are funded outside of the command. With the Joint Innovation Outpost, that was a very real problem that we looked at. When we started to stand up this facility, under General Carrilla, times were very different, funds were very different, partnerships were different. Under General Donahue, things became a little bit more challenging, but we still felt like we had a pathway. And then we got to General Anderson in the environment we're right now, like, hey, as a 18th Airborne Corps, there's some things here that we have to overcome. Like, we don't have OpFund, we don't have a unit budget to run an innovation facility where we can bring all these partners together. Like, we're not funded for that. We don't have the authorities to do it, right? So we have all these roadblocks from, like, I'm like, okay, this is now gonna become problematic because the Army has spent a ton of money to renovate this facility as an innovation center, and that's where timing is everything. Relationships matter. You know, I have a fantastic relationship with ASALT. I think ASALT is a great organization that is really trying to do a lot of interesting things right now. And they're like, yeah, hey, you know what? We need to reform acquisition and get in line with what the Chief of Staff and the Secretary of the Army want to do, right? So we want to partner with you. So ASALT is going to help us with the funding and the authorities to actually make the JIOP. That's why I believe that this facility, that to me is the future of innovation for the Army, right? If we can get the model right, we can show success, we can get some wins out of the gate, we have the right partnerships. Like, I think that's the model for success. So we don't have to fund it internally out of the commander's budget, which is OMA. You don't want to fund experimentation with OMA.
Can you explain about Maven systems and how AI is incorporated into exercises and operations? Is it easy to incorporate and use the joint and partnered environment?
So Maven, and this is, there's a little bit to unpack there. There's Maven Smart Systems, which is the Palantir product, and there's the Project Maven NGA actual ecosystem. We spend time in both. Both systems are easy to use. They're very intuitive. And that's one of the things that we found within the Corps in partnerships with Army Futures Command and the Army Software Factory out in Austin, Texas. We received the first cohort of Army Software Factory graduates. And they were trained on full stack development, but they also use them for in-platform development with low-code and no-code solutions in Maven. So Maven is incredibly easy to use. The AI and computer vision models that exist in the platform are easy to employ. But we'd run a Foundry boot camp really whenever, as needed. We ran one for Jihad of South. We're getting ready to help Southcom with the Foundry boot camp. So Foundry is the portion of Maven where a soldier can go in and they can develop their own low-code, no-code solutions. So within that particular platform, and NextGen C2 has the same capability, they have Foundry. Any soldier can be trained on how to go through and build a custom capability to be able to use data the way that they want to use data and visualize it the way that they want to visualize it. They don't have to wait for the operational data team, the Army Software Factory graduates that we have, to go and solve the problem for them, because there's a limited resource. Between the G6 and the ODT, it's not an unlimited amount of people. So we have to box in what is in the commander's priority. So then we do a Foundry boot camp, so any soldier can go develop the thing that they want to develop. And that's going to be the beauty of Next Gen C2. They'll have the same capability. So you don't have to outfit an ODT at depth to solve every single problem. A soldier in a staff section or warfighting function can visualize the problem, get access to the platform with a little bit of training, and then build their own solution.
That was our final question for Mr. Braun. Please welcome General Fredenberg back to the stage.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Braun, for joining us here today. I know you had a bit of an adventure getting here last night, so thank you for being adaptive. And thanks for making a difference in integrating technology to support the non-kinetic and decision dominance at the 18th Airborne Corps. One of the most important things that you're doing is building and reinforcing the innovative and adaptability culture there, and that's important across our entire Army. So in lieu of a speaker gift, a donation is going to be made to the Signal and Cyber Museum Society on your behalf. So thank you very much. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, another full day ahead. In addition to panels and discussions here in the Marriott, don't forget that we have a lot of tracks over at the Georgia Cyber Center. The Georgia Cyber Center is a short walk. I know it's hot out, or you can get one of our free golf cart rides over to the Georgia Cyber Center. Make your way over to the Riverwalk entrance, which is over here, and there'll be volunteers, and that continuously runs loops all day. Also, be sure to visit our expanded exhibit area. If you're in the main exhibit hall, there's a giant sign that says additional exhibits out just off the floor. We've expanded these exhibits. We had 70 the additional industry partners that could not get into the conversation, so we built a giant pavilion out there so that we can include them here, so be sure to visit them out there. Our next session in this room is going to be a panel session, Reprogramming for Resilience, Urgency of Rapid Electronic Warfare Reprogramming, at 12:45 to 2 p.m. So we'll see you back in this room this afternoon. Have a great day.